Sahana vavatu Sahana bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu vidvishavahai Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Page 33. Food in the mode of goodness is prepared with pure ingredients, cooked in pure consciousness, and served by pure devotees in a proper environment. Such food is purifying and brings health and longevity. In contrast, the food in the mode of passion results in distress, misery, and disease. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, distress refers to the suffering felt while eating foods in the mode of passion. Misery refers to the despair one feels after eating, and disease refers to the future results. The next three verses, 11 to 13, describe different types of sacrifices performed according to the modes of nature. Sacrifices performed according to the scriptures without expecting results are in the mode of goodness. Sacrifices performed for some material benefit or for the sake of pride are in the mode of passion. Sacrifices performed without faith, disregarding the scriptures, without distribution of spiritual food, chanting of Vedic hymns, and remuneration of the priests are considered to be in the mode of ignorance. What would be the impetus for performing a sacrifice without desire for results? Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan explains, quote, one should concentrate the mind thinking, this sacrifice should be done solely because of the instructions in the Vedas directing me to do so. It is not to be done for achieving results. So that the Vedas say, we have to remember Krishna is the compiler of the Vedas. So by following the Vedas, you're following Krishna. So it's not just that it's dry. See, in the West, following ritual is dry because the ritual is man-made. Right? So man-made ritual naturally become boring because it will be created for a particular time, place, or circumstance. While the Vedic injunctions coming from the Lord then are eternal. So they don't get that aspect. So it's not a matter, well, it's dry, what about the feelings, all this? Isn't it a feeling that you're following the Vedas? Is that not a purpose, right? I have the feel, I want to do this to please this person, or I want to do it to please myself. What about if I'm doing it to please Krishna? Right? By following the Vedas. Does that make sense? So it's not a matter of, then it's dry, it's just a drama where nobody actually has any feelings. Like that. One can't actually get to the point where there's no feelings. There's no such thing. You know, the person he's so impersonal, he doesn't deal with anyone properly, that's all because of his feelings. He's just thinking of himself. So he's very personal. Just your persona doesn't have anything to do with it, that's all. You understand? So when we define impersonal, we mean we're left out of it. But there's no such thing as anybody doing anything that's impersonal. Even the impersonalist is following that path because of his own personal needs and desires. So there's no such thing actually as impersonal. There's impersonalist philosophy, but there's no such thing as doing something except for that. So one should do it because this is what I'm supposed to do. Right? And if I do what I'm supposed to do, others will do what they're supposed to do, and it will work together because Krishna's plan is complete. Right? So if everyone does what they're supposed to, it'll end up with something very nice. Right? Does that make sense? But it's not just because I'm doing it. It's because it pleases Krishna. So the mode of goodness is I'm doing it because I'm directed to. And because Krishna is giving that direction, I'm doing it to please Him. That's devotion. Right? Does that make sense? So the devotion and the mode of goodness go together very well. The next 6 verses, 14 to 19, because devotional service means naishkarmya, mode of goodness means naishkarmya, so the two match very nicely. As the basis, it works very well. The next 6 verses, 14 to 19, describe the austerities performed in the modes. Right? Because sacrifice means you've done something voluntarily giving up the result for someone else. So that's the point that stands out in, how you say, in sacrifice. Right? The austerities performed with transcendental faith without expecting material benefits and done only for the sake of Krishna are in the mode of goodness and are threefold. Right? So austerity here it's the sacrifice, the emphasis is that you're following the rules because they're directed in the Veda, without desire for results. Okay, so the point is that you're doing an activity without desiring the results. That activity is recommended in the Vedas. Right? Austerity will mean what duties you're supposed to be doing. You understand? There's a slight difference. Not much, but there's a slight difference. They're connected. The one is that this is how sacrifice works. It's generic. You're following the scriptures like that without desire for results. So whatever that is, then that's sacrifice. So that element that I'm doing what I'm restricting my life according to scriptures and giving the results to others. Right? That will be sacrifice. Austerity is that this is what I'm supposed to do. This is my duty, and I do my duty. Right? So then in the mode of goodness are threefold, yes.
Do we also hear austerity used in situations where people are actually not doing what they're supposed to be doing?
I mean, it means you can use the word. It means there's what the word is for, and then there's how it may be used. Like if I say, wow, today's feast was really, it was like really bad. What do I mean?
It wasn't a feast.
No.
I didn't like it.
You didn't like it? Anyone else?
It was really good.
It was really good.
Oh, like that.
You know what I'm saying? In other words, there's what is the original uses of the words, and then there's how colloquially we may use it. So austerity or the sacrifice will mean that you're doing something for a higher cause. That higher cause is supposed to be God. Then next down from that, at least mode of goodness. Right? And then mode of passion is better than ignorance, so it's going to give you trouble. Right? But it can also just means the generic you're giving up something for someone else. So that could mean anything, like that. Does that make sense? You bought an ice cream, you bought one for the kid always stupidly drops it, right? That's always what they have to do. So you give your ice cream to them, right? So that's sacrifice. But it's on a lower level, depending on what's your motive. Does that make sense? So then, just like that, so that sacrifice has a ritual. Now you have the rituals that are given in the Vedas, but you could also have man-made rituals. You know what I'm saying? So someone's doing a sacrifice, though it's by man-made rituals for their own motives to gods that don't really necessarily exist, to all these different things. You could call it a sacrifice, but it's not actually what it's meant for. Does that make sense? It would be, another example would be like calling an ambassador a car, right? You know what I'm saying? You could in the longest stretch of the term, like that. But in reality, that's another thing. You know what I'm saying? So same with austerity. Like Prabhupada will say is like, in the wintertime, the girls are out with very skimpy clothing. That's very austere. But it's austerity in the mode of ignorance, because it's based on the body. So you can say it's like that. Does that make sense? So that's why then all the modes are there. So it's define the mode of goodness. That's the actual definition. Mode of passion is kind of you're doing the right thing, but the wrong motive, right? Goodness is the right activity, right motive. Mode of passion is right activity, wrong motive. And mode of ignorance, wrong activity, wrong motive. Does that make sense? Yes.
Could you describe the principal difference between the sacrifice and the austerity?
I think we already did, didn't we? Isn't that how we opened the first 10 minutes?
I was absent. I was absent.
So, okay. So, the austerity will mean that you're performing your prescribed duties. That's austerity. That you do that instead of doing something whimsically. Sacrifice means that you're performing those duties for the benefit of someone else. That's the difference.
Austerities, they are not related to others.
Austerities are not related to others. Means
they're not necessarily related to others.
That means others are always connected, but it's just a matter of see, it becomes difficult when we spend 10 minutes describing it, and then you'll ask questions not based on that. So I would just listen and let's see. Austerities of the body. The worship of Krishna, Brahmins, the spiritual masters, and superiors like father and mother. Cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and non-violence. So that means how the body is worshipped. It's controlled, right? So one is respecting others, because otherwise one wants to respect oneself. So that's not austerity, but it's respecting others. So those senior to yourself. So Krishna, the Brahmins, spiritual masters, superiors like mother, father, anyone that's superior. So that respect of those senior to yourself, that's an austerity, because otherwise you'd rather not do that, or you'd rather you be worshipped. Right? Cleanliness, because the body is kept clean, like that, because its natural tendency is to become dirty, but you keep it always in a clean state. Simplicity, you do deal with it in such a way that it is not complicated. Right? The simplicity doesn't mean it's not sophisticated. It just means that it's very direct between what you're doing and its results. Right? It means you're doing something, it gives a result very easily. The situation you're in, it's very natural to do that, and very naturally gets that result. That is simple. Complicated is there's all kinds of obstacles that can get in the way. Celibacy means that the senses are controlled and just used in what they're supposed to be used for. Right? Non-violence means it will be in connection with the Lord. Right? It'll be a connection with the soul. Right? If you see things according to the soul, then there's no violence. Right? You see things according to authority, according to the scriptures, there's no violence. Right? So, in other words, violence means it's not progressive. And if it's progressive, it's non-violent. Yes?
I think simplicity in management, that means to be straightforward, because...
Straightforward, but what do you mean by straightforward?
Not, diplomacy...
What's wrong with diplomacy? Just like, am I going to tell you that chutter is brand new, it looks like you just bought it yesterday, so it's kind of a little stupid. That's non-diplomatic. So is that good?
No.
So why you give the term diplomacy, why is that bad? What's the problem with diplomacy? In here, yes?
Diplomacy when it's crooked.
Crooked. And so what defines it as crooked?
Ulterior motive.
Ulterior motive. So what does that ulterior motive mean, according to what was been described here? You want something for yourself. So when it's diplomacy and mode of passion, it's a problem. But if it's a mode of goodness because it's your duty, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So the point is when you're dealing with others, this idea that, it's based on facts and it's, straightforward, I say whatever I want. But I say whatever I want is my own feeling. It's not for the benefit of someone else. So they're saying, no, you should just be honest and open, means I'm saying that about you because I don't want anything hidden, because I want to know everything, because if I know things, I'll feel more safe. And so if there's something I don't know. So it's motivated on my path that I'm my position. I'm saying that. Someone else, no, I thought we were, had a relationship. We're just straightforward. Means I don't want to take the trouble or be disturbed by that I have to actually be careful of what I say, and control myself. You know what I'm saying? So, therefore, the modern concepts of things we have to be very, very careful about, because why are they there? There may be some good element. Okay, so that the government runs things, you don't know why things are running and you're being controlled and all that. No, it's good that you know basically what's going on, but you don't need to know detail, because what does it matter? Because if we need to know what the government detail, why don't we know what our neighbor's detail is? You know what I'm saying? So there's a weakness to this because it's not based on the Vedas. So we always have to understand that as the modern, it always will fall short. Always. It's not a matter, well, no, it's pretty good. No, it always will fall short because it does not see the bigger picture. It does not. You know what I'm saying? Yudhishthira Maharaj saw the world, how that worked, all living entities on the planet, and how this planet worked in connection with the rest of the universe. That's administration. But you tell me of one country that sees their administration in connection with the whole world, let alone the universe. Right? So that means they're going to fall short. So we have to be very careful about these points, because they're based on this very first point. Austerity of the body, worship of Krishna, Brahmas as spiritual master and superiors like mother and father. Here we're talking mother and father, let alone a temple president, a sannyasi, a GBC, or guru. You know what I'm saying? But if they're in question, then why? Nobody cares for the mother and father. Why? Because positions higher than that, Brahmin spiritual masters, are in question. So why won't the lower? And so is that creating this fabulous, wonderful, social interaction? No. So that's because there's no austerity of the body. Okay. So simplicity simply means it's straightforward. It's not complicated. You know what I'm saying? You wipe the floor. You pick up a rag and wipe the floor. Complicated is I have to call in some outside people, bring in all the machines and do this and that. And that's complicated.
It seems in management many times you have to conceal the truth.
But that's another thing. How does simplicity and that, what is there? You're not understanding. You're connecting the thing. Conceal the truth. What is truth? What is truth? Yeah, but if you go like that, that means then you don't know. And so then concealing the truth it just sounds good. In other words, that's diplomacy. That's 101% of diplomacy. Say, oh, it conceals the truth because it sounds good. Everyone's going to go, oh yes, truth is important. Why? Because in Kali Yuga, it's the only element of the religious principles left. So you know that you can get support saying that. That's pure diplomacy. You understand? So what's truth? Krishna. What are you going to say? But is that what they want in that meeting together? You get all your people together and have your committee and have a meeting? Is that the truth they want to hear? No, they want facts. So to them, facts are truth. No, facts the environment. What you do with the environment, that's the actual point. I have a knife, I put it on the table. Is that dangerous? No, it's just a knife. Is it beneficial? But it's not doing anything. You understand? So depending on what you do with it, that defines if it's good or bad. But they're just saying that facts themselves stand on their own with this great light shining down, through the clouds. That itself, if I know the facts, then everything's done. No, they know the facts, they know the situation. Now, what was done in that situation, what they're going to do in the situation, that's different. So what they do is they'll say, these are the facts, so whatever the person did, that doesn't matter. And now whatever we do, no one can question. Because the position of responsibility for action in the environment, that's not taken. So that's diplomacy, that's not truth. You know what I'm saying? So it's only talk that they say truth and truth is good and diplomacy is bad. That's all talk by cheaters.
So diplomacy is used for Krishna's pleasure, it's fine.
Yes, but it's not a matter of just Krishna's pleasure, but it's Krishna's pleasure according to your duty. Like that. So if it's your duty, just like, everybody's got to know everything about everyone else. It's not your duty. So therefore, you wanting to know is not in the mode of goodness. And so it'll be really hard to say it's for Krishna. You know what I'm saying? Austerity of speech, words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, not agitating to others, and also the recital of Vedic literature. Not agitating to others. Right? So that means that it has to be diplomatic. Diplomatic simply means you use the proper words for the proper time in the proper situation. That's what diplomacy means. Now, that is used by people for their own purposes, so it gets a bad name. But diplomacy shouldn't get the bad name. The people that are using it in that way should get the bad name. Right? Also the recital of the Vedas. So truthful means in connection with the Veda, in connection with the Lord. It's not, it's false. Right? Just like that point where they asked Prabhupada, just man on the street asked Prabhupada, if you know everything, the spiritual master knows everything, how many windows in the Empire State Building? And he said, how many windows in a mirage? Because it's not real. It's connected to Krishna, it's real. It's not connected to Krishna, it's an illusion. So facts not connected to Krishna are illusion. And they will have that effect. Does that make sense? Pleasing, it spoke very nicely, right? It's eloquent, like that. Beneficial, that there's the spiritual benefit by following it, right? One will be uplifted, one will move forward, like that. Austerities of the mind, satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and the purification of the existence. So satisfaction means what you have, you're comfortable with. Because if you're not comfortable with that, you'll never be comfortable with anything. Because you're always in a state of having something. Right? And so if you're always in a state of trying to get more because you're not satisfied with what you have, you'll always be doing that. Right? So the mind should be satisfied with what it has. Then you properly perform your duties. Then you can if you're satisfied with what you have, you can then naturally do work where you're not looking for the result. Right? The man who has tons of money, he can come to the temple and do things for the temple that will generate money and this and that, and he's happy because he's got enough. He's doing something for someone else. You understand? Like that. So satisfaction then makes it so that one can do all these other things very nicely. Right? Simplicity, again, you don't complicate it. It's just, this is the way it is. Deal with it the way it is. Right? You want that stark reality. Then that element of simplicity, do it with your own mind. Why everybody else's. That's the thing. It means, in other words, it's a mode of ignorance. Everything's turned around. So because it's a mode of passion, it's in the middle, so it's obvious. But you turn the thing completely around, opposite, you get confused. Because it looks like the same thing. The mode of ignorance, in one sense, looks like the mode of goodness. But it's exact opposite. So that's the thing. If people use nice language and all that, then one can be confused. Gravity means one's thoughtful. It's one's focused on things. One looks at things as they are and then sees, what is the actual reality. One takes things seriously. Right? Self-control, that the senses are engaged according to what they should be engaged in. And the purification of existence means everything that one does should be uplifting. That means it has to be connected some way to the Shastra, to Krishna. Austerities performed out of pride for the sake of gaining honor, respect, and worship are in the mode of passion and are temporary. Austerities performed out of foolishness, with self-torture, or to destroy others are in the mode of ignorance. Right? So here, for the sake of honor, respect, worship are in the mode of passion. So that's generally how people are using diplomacy, this, that. So therefore it gets a bad name. But diplomacy is not the problem. It's how it's used. The following 3 verses, 20 to 22, describe the charity in the modes. Charity given at a proper time and place to a worthy person without expecting return is in the mode of goodness. Charity performed in a grudging mood with a desire for fruit of results is in the mode of passion. Charity performed in an impure place at an improper time to unworthy persons or without proper attention and respect is in the mode of ignorance. Right? So you have impure place, improper time, unworthy persons. Right? So that will define it as the mode of ignorance. Or everything may be proper, but it's done without proper attention and respect. So these will put it into the mode of ignorance. So in other words, the first ones are it's whimsical, or you're not properly paying attention and everything, because that's part of it. Because if you're not paying attention, it means the mind's not involved. And if the mind's not involved, then it's just the body. Right? And the body's, basically ignorance. You know what I'm saying? The point is it's the manifestation, it's the gross manifestation of the mind. Does that make sense? So one has to be careful. In this section, the Lord described the criteria by which one can assess his own advancement and the advancement of others according to preferences in worship, food, austerity, sacrifice, and charity. These preferences are divided into 3 categories, but they are always contaminated by the material modes of nature. Therefore, even those who are inclined towards the best material situation are still bound in the material world. Right? So, even one is situated in goodness, that's still not good enough. It has to go to the point of devotion. Right? But the mode of goodness, that's the situation. Now, if we notice, did any of those elements in the mode of goodness, were they so specific that they can't be performed in the Kali Yuga or can't be performed in the 21st century? You understand? They're not dealing with the specific. They're dealing with the principle on which the rituals and rules are followed. Right? Satisfaction, that can be applied anytime. Speaking beneficially, not agitating, that can be done anytime. Right? Worship of superiors, being clean, simple, celibate, these are things that can be done anytime. So we have to remember is that, therefore, that's the best situation. So it can always be attained. Right? So this idea that things can't be followed. No, the principles can always be followed. A detail, of course the details, some details. That's why time, place, and circumstance are there. Right? If there was no such thing as time, place, and circumstance, would there be a need for any adjustment in the ritual? No. It's only because of the time, place, and circumstance that there's need of adjustment. That means there will be so many rules given for what? To cover all time, places, and circumstances. Right? And one has to use one's intelligence to know what is applied where. Right? Now in verses 23 to 28, Krishna will explain that by chanting Om Tat Sat and dedicating all activities to him, one can remove all defects of one's work. Yes?
Could you just explain briefly how those 3 elements like sacrifice, charity, related to Sambandha Vidya Prayojana? Just briefly.
Sacrifice, charity, and austerity.
Because during the previous class he was describing how the austerity is how one views his result and...
Yes, so that already explained it. So why you're asking again? See, at the time you have to ask because then we're focusing on that area. Does that make sense? If you have a question on something, ask at the time that we're discussing it. Because if you go after a few days, now we're focusing on something else. So that fine detail you may not get. So to get there, we've gone to that fine detail by discussing it for quite a while. And so at this point, we may not just pop back to that. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying?
I understand that still.
You don't, but at the same time as now you're feeling that I'm not taking care of your needs, but at the same time as there's another 30 people here who've already heard it. See, previously I would deal with it. But then I started finding that after a while, senior men don't come to the classes anymore. Why? Because they get really annoyed that it's moving along in a particular level of depth, and then somebody will come along and keep taking it back. Like we went last week, we were only discussing questions of, the second chapter, third chapter, fourth chapter. And it was also the same, the emotional demanding that if you don't deal with this, then you're not actually being fair and, broad-minded and taking care, and that it's my fault.
No, I didn't mean like this.
Sure you did. Otherwise, why did you go? Because you were simply reciprocating with me doing that before. I only did that because the day before that means that on Tuesday I made it very clear, don't do this. You know what I'm saying? Only because we're short on time. If not, spending time, I don't mind. We spent 1.5 years on 10 chapters of Bhagavatam. It didn't bother me at all, but the problem is many people here have to go, and they want it finished before Gaur Purnima. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay, verses 23 and 28. 23. From the beginning of creation, the three words Om Tat Sat were used to indicate the supreme absolute truth. These three symbolic representations were used by Brahmins while chanting the hymns of the Vedas and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Lord. Therefore, transcendentalists undertaking performances of sacrifice, charity, penance, and in accordance with scriptural regulations, always begin always with Om to obtain the supreme. Without desiring fruit or results, one should perform various kinds of sacrifices, penances, and charity with the word Tat. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from material entanglement. The absolute truth is the object of devotional sacrifice and is indicated with the word Sat. The performer of such sacrifice is also called Sat, as all works of sacrifice, penance, and charity, which, true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, O Son of Prita. Anything done as sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, O Son of Prita, is impermanent. It is called Asat, and is useless, both in this life and the next. Okay. Then verses 23 to 28, the goal of all activities, pleasing Krishna. From the beginning of creation, the Brahmins, while chanting the hymns of the Vedas and during sacrifices, use Om Tat Sat. These three words indicate the Supreme Absolute Truth, Sri Krishna. All activities are meant for his satisfaction. Okay, and then in the footnote, Sripad Madhvacharya explains the meaning of Om Tat Sat as follows. Om Tat Sat are three well-known names of the Supreme Being. The Rig Veda Kila says, the Lord is called Om because the whole world is woven, Otam, into him and abides in him. His true nature is knowable only through the Vedas in their primary sense. And he is not accessible through ordinary perception or inference. Therefore, is referred to as tat, that. Right? In other words, there's this and there's that. You can't see through this, that. Right? This is the Upanishads. This, that. He is ever full of all auspicious attributes and is free from all imperfections. And for that reason, he is known as Sat, flawless. Therefore, the wise apply to him three names, Om Tat Sat. That's from his Gita Bhashya from 1723. Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport to verse 23, it has been explained that penance, charity, and foods are divided into, penance, sacrifice, charity, and foods are divided into three categories. The modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. But whether first class, second class, or third class, they are all conditioned, contaminated by the material modes of nature. When they are aimed at the Supreme, Om Tat Sat, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Eternal, They become means for spiritual elevation. In the scriptural injunctions, such an objective is indicated. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan further explains. In speaking of the three types of sacrifice, austerity, and charity, with divisions into three modes, those which were in the mode of goodness were shown to be accepted, and those in the mode of passion and ignorance were shown to be rejected. Now the Lord says that sacrifice, austerity, and charity by persons qualified with sattva should be performed along with chanting the names of Vishnu. If these names, Om Tat Sat, are used along with sacrifice and other acts, these names will compensate for any fault in the performance of the various parts of the sacrifice. By uttering these sounds, one is assured of getting the results. So now we're dealing with the goal of all this. So austerity, charity have been established as means of elevation, how one's going to, process that one's going to use. So then the goal has to be the Lord. Right? So then the Lord then will be connected with everything that one's doing by understanding this Om Tat Sat. He's the Supreme Person, right? He cannot be seen or obtained through the material energy, right? It's only through devotional service. And he is flawless. He's the perfect goal, the perfect, the perfect goal. It means prayojana finds its perfection in him. Right? That's what one's trying to obtain. Is that smoke too much? No? Okay. So, you bring out these aspects within prayojana, right, of the Supreme Lord himself, right? That process is being performed without the desire for result, and then he is the perfect goal, right? Does that make sense? So within prayojana, then you have those three. So Om Tat Sat takes care of all the aspects that are there. Right? In other words, the field that's there, when you perform something, you'll get something. That's by the grace of the Lord. He is interwoven, but him you'll only see through devotion, right? Not through something else. So when you perform an activity, a result will be gained. You can see that result. At the same time as that's not what's important. It is what is gained through that interaction of performing something for the Lord's satisfaction. Right? That's what one is trying to do. One is trying to get to that position. That makes sense? Yes.
Is it that also this Om Tat Sat is one of the only few places in Gita where Krishna refers to the chanting of his name in relation to sacrifice?
And the point is?
I'm asking if this...
No, but I'm saying what's the benefit of that?
Because he's basically pointing that by chanting Om Tat Sat, one ensure that the sacrifice...
Yeah, but the Om Tat Sat's it's not specific, just chanting of it. It's of course, there's the chanting, but it's of understanding what that is. Like Om is there, Prabhupada says, Om Tat Vishnu Paramam Param. Like that. In other words, seeing the Lord, how to obtain the Lord. By the great sages, by their following their instructions, their directions, their example, they see the Lord, you'll be able to see the Lord. So by performing those activities, then that's Tat. Alright? And then they're directed at the Supreme Lord who is Sat. Does that make sense? Like that. So, in other words, he's taking it, he's pointed out the modes, because in the previous chapter we're defining that the material world is nourished by the modes. The tree of material existence is nourished by the modes. You're not acting under the modes, the tree is not nourished. So one's not in material existence. So to be able to understand if you're under those modes or not, then we've gone through the detail in this chapter. But even once gone through and pointed out the mode of goodness, still it's a mode. And so it has to be transcended by connecting it to the Lord. So unless that's connected, Om Tat Sat, then you're still. So that is the point that was being given in the 13th chapter, is that you see the field and the knower of the field, then you're out of material existence. Right? And so, to know this, then you have to know the difference between the soul, the super soul, and the material energy. Right? So seeing like that, one's not under the modes. Right? So this modes, why that's important? Because the modes nourish the tree of material existence. So therefore there needs to be a study of the tree and a study of the modes. Right? And then, so now that we know that the modes are there, it's been defined, then this chapter gets down to detail. Right? Because the 16th chapter goes into that the modes are there and what will be the effect. But now it's saying specifically how you define the mode. So then you can see the faith. Because the faith is the point. Is the faith in the Lord? Is the faith in something else? Right? So if faith is in something of higher standard, that's the mode of goodness. If it's not, that'll be passion and ignorance. So that's why it's rejected. Right? So the mode of goodness is the desired effect. Right? But it's only to be used as a stepping stone. Right? Since you're dealing with the modes, you have to know what they are and you have to know how to transcend them by connecting to the Lord. So that's the point. Yes.
Could it sometimes be necessary or useful to use sacrifice in the mode of ignorance?
What means, what would be the benefit of sacrifice in the mode of ignorance?
I was thinking, heard from Ramana Maharaj that if some beggar comes to you and asks for money, you should give.
But that's not sacrifice in the mode of ignorance, because is it your duty to give or not?
Yeah.
So, and who recommends that?
Yeah.
The Scriptures. So how is that in the mode of ignorance?
I'm thinking it's an improper place for a,
No, but what kind of sacrifice is being performed? Are you doing some big, nice devotional sacrifice to the deities out on the street? No, you're giving, 1 rupee to a beggar. So where does the beggar stay?
in the street.
Street. Okay. And, is the beggar poor?
Yeah.
Okay. So, therefore, it's right place, right circumstance.
Like
You understand?
also, use that money as a flock.
That's another thing. How he uses it means you do your duty. How he uses it, that's his problem. You know what I'm saying? If it's your duty, then by you performing it, then that's another thing, Otherwise, the parents could say, well, we had this child and then he grows up to being a demon or something, So then, you know what I'm saying? No, but they're supposed to have children and try to train them in Krishna conscious, and the child is supposed to become Krishna conscious. If he doesn't, if they've done their duties and he doesn't, then that's his problem. Right? If they don't perform their duties, then they're implicated in that problem. You know what I'm saying? So the point is it's the proper performance. It's not, mode of ignorance means it's against the principles, it's whimsical, it's an illusion. So then why one's recommending that it's good or sometimes has to be performed? You know what I'm saying? So there's a contradiction there. The point is the person himself may be in ignorance, he may use it in ignorance, but that's his problem. That's why we only give him 1 rupee. We don't give him, 1,000 rupees. You know what I'm saying? That would be improper. That would be the mode of ignorance, because that's inappropriate. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? A kid, you give him $5 for Christmas, right? They don't give him 1,000, right? That would be improper, because he won't use it. So that's the point, is according to their position, that's what you give. Better than giving money is to give food, because what can you do with it? Other than eat it, right? So it's kind of limited, Plus you're guaranteed that he's going to get some devotional benefit. He appreciates his prasad, he gets devotional benefit. He doesn't, he gets sukriti. Right? But the money, that may be wasted, so that's why that's not as ideal. Right? Does that make sense? Although the Vedas recommend gradual cultivation of the mode of goodness and avoidance of the modes of passion and ignorance, this is not their final conclusion. Krishna's real desire is described in verses 24 to 27. While performing sacrifice, charity, and penance in accordance with scriptural regulations, they start with Om to obtain the supreme. Without desiring, means, in other words, that's the point. All right, so you're situating yourself in to obtain, but you haven't performed it. You situate yourself there, so you and the Lord, you see the proper relationship. right? So then that has that aspect. Without desiring fruit of results, right? Because you're performing the activity. That's where, in other words, when does the question of fruit of results come in? Right? At what point in the process? Sambandha abhideya prayojana. Abhideya, right? I mean, of course, prayojana is there, but if it's been there in abhideya, that it's done in naishkarmya, then prayojana is a good chance it's going to remain that way. Right? But if it's done for fruitive purposes, then when you get the result, there's every chance you're going to want to apply it in that way. Right? So then that would be the abhideya. Without desiring fruitive results, one should engage with such performances with the word. In other words, such performances that will generate no fruit of result. With the word tat, to get free from material entanglement. In other words, that is for the Lord, it's not for me. Right? That's why when it's offered, it's for Krishna, it's not for me. Right? The object of devotional service is the absolute truth, indicated by sat, because they are performed for pleasing Krishna. When one performs penance, charity, and sacrifice with these three words, he is acting in Krishna consciousness. So if you see yourself in relationship to the Lord, in other words, the field and the knower of the field, right? So then you situate yourself properly. Then you perform that activity without a desire for results to please the Lord. If that's done, if these three are applied on these activities, penance, charity, and sacrifice, then one is situated in devotional service. Even though, yes.
There's one question.
Ah, yes.
Maharaj, after we performed the sacrifice for the Lord, we say the word Om Tat Sat. And when we read the Bhagavad Gita, the 18th chapter, there's a summary conclusion. Is it significant that we're hearing these words at the end of the 17th? Is that kind of indicating that we've performed the sacrifice by reading the Bhagavad Gita?
You can. I mean, there's always at the end of something, that's always the beginning of the next.
Right. So is it indicating?
Maybe, but then I would say is let us get to later and then we'll see the connection. Like that, Because the point is that what Krishna is saying, it's not specifically the chanting of Om Tat Sat, it's the understanding of Om Tat Sat. So he says you perform this with Om Tat Sat. That means you understand your relationship with the Lord and that you perform activities for His satisfaction. Like that. If your charity, austerity, and sacrifice are done in that way, then it becomes devotional service. Otherwise, then you can situate yourself in goodness. That's nice, but you're still in the material world. Right? So we're trying to differentiate between the material and the spiritual. Right? And then, since we have to act, and we are situated within the material sphere, how to engage that material sphere in the Lord's in devotional service. Right? So that's your Om Tat Sat. You're going to perform these activities with that benefit. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes.
If we do activities which are devotional service,
Which are.
like chanting, pure directly, then we fall into routine, like doing it automatic because we do it every day. What's the situation and the benefit?
Benefit is once connected with the Lord, but the other thing is like, what does it mention? If something's done, an activity is done with no attention, what mode is, you show ignorance. So, in other words, that aspect has to be removed. We have to be attentive. Right? Does that make sense? So, when we find we're not attentive, then we try to become. But that we're engaged in that activity, then we're rightly situated doing the right thing. So we're associating with the Lord. But the point is the benefit that we want may not be fully there. Does that make sense? It's just like you're in the house and, let's not say. You're in a situation and your others are around and it would be natural to interact, but they're not. They're just busy doing whatever they're doing. Right? So you'll feel left out, though what they're doing is in connection with you, but you're not as a person involved. Does that make sense? So that's going to get very minimal interaction from your side. You know what I'm saying? The Krishnas now will be upset about that because we're dependent. But Krishna's not dependent. So then it's just a matter of, they're not interacting, so he doesn't interact. So love of God means it's interactive. Does that make sense? So therefore, inattentive chanting is not useful, because then how will Krishna respond to that? How he will interact with that? Does that make sense? That's the difficulty. So, in other words, one is analyzing these things because not that, okay, there's this one symptom, so that's all there is the mode of ignorance. As we know, everything is mixed. So every mode there's no pure manifestation of a particular mode. There'll be something like that. You know what I'm saying? So the guy is out there on the street, he's running his, particular, criminal activities and all that. He's speaking roughly, he's disturbing others, so you definitely see some motive passion there. There is, definitely a motive for gaining the results of his criminal activities like this. That he's doing this is in opposition to the Vedas and all that, so then it will be in the mode of ignorance. He's doing it on his own desires, it's whimsical, so it's mode of ignorance. But at the same time as he's doing all that, because when he goes home, then he can take care of his mother. You know what I'm saying? So there's a touch of all the modes there. But you see what's prominent, that's how you'll classify it. Does that make sense? What color is that line there? What do we generally call it?
Dark black.
Yeah, black. But is it pure black?
Bluish.
No, it's bluish black, because we'll still call it black. You know what I'm saying? But now that's more black. You know what I'm saying? So the point is whatever's predominant, that's what we'll call it. You know what I'm saying? This is orange. And that's orange. Right? Because of the combination between the red and the yellow is still visible, but that's got more red, this has more yellow. But you add a little bit more red or a little bit more yellow, and then you're going to start calling it red or yellow. You're not going to call it orange. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So the modes work like that. Whatever's prominent, that's what we're going to call it. But these others are going to be mixed. That's why devotional service is important. Then it becomes pure. Right? Because there's always, even you're doing according to the rules, but your motive is, to be good or to be nice or to get, benefit, then that's the mode of passion. And you're doing all that, you're following the Vedas, you're doing everything perfectly, but why are you doing everything like that? Because then you think it's pious existence, it's religious, it's nice, great. But they're thinking that, I'm from this particular position, I am that, so that means they're not distinguishing between the body and the soul. So that's ignorance. You understand? So there's always going to be. So that's why the study is there, to be able to analyze. So what is good, keep. What's bad, remove. Just like before we said about diplomacy. Then then the whole thing goes out. So then if you take out diplomacy, then that means you also remove the need to follow the austerity of speech and speak nicely. Therefore, you can sit around and, you get this circle and everybody just says what they like, stand up, yell, scream, and this guy is like that. Then afterwards, everyone goes, wow, that was great. Like that. But, you know what I'm saying? So it's where is the, huh? Yeah, self-improvement means everybody agreed to get together to do something selfish. In other words, it was an agreed upon that I want to be selfish, but I'm willing to let you be selfish also. So it's a cooperation, but it doesn't go beyond, pranamoy. At best, this is, real low-level pranamoy.
Basically all what modern culture is.
Yes, of course. That's the
body selfishness.
Yeah. But the dharma is not there. What's the duty there? Right? Because the point is you want to speak your mind, But one has to take that time, the right place and circumstance, so that one can speak it in the right way. Because the point is the relationship continuing after you've said all those things important or not? You know, and if the person's upset, well, I was just being truthful, and then you're supposed to say, oh, okay, that makes everything okay. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So this is the, how do you say? Rupa Goswami also says, be straightforward in ordinary dealings. Means that you have to say something in that, but it doesn't mean that you don't say it nicely. Is that okay? Yeah. So in other words, these things are to analyze what situation we're in. And so if it's 90% goodness with 10% passion or ignorance, then that's the point where we have to look at. But even we look at that, still more important is that it's connected to Krishna. Right? And then if we say, oh, if it's connected to Krishna, it doesn't matter. In one sense, it doesn't, but on another sense, if Krishna's satisfaction is what you're trying to gain, so does that 10% of ignorance, is that the most ideal for serving Krishna? Since he's perfect, why wouldn't we want to the best of our ability, make it perfect? In other words, if it's the best of our ability, it is perfect. But if we could do better, but we're not just saying that, oh, that's enough, then that means that's all the better the relationship is also. Does that make sense? So, even though recommended by the Lord, the mode of goodness does not have real value unless it is used for further advancement in Krishna consciousness. This is important. These are, much earlier chapters. So it's being given is that if it's not connected to the Lord, it is useless. If it's connected to the Lord, it has use. Now, then we can look at the quality of the usefulness. Just because it's useful doesn't mean it's the best. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? A fish or a potato. Okay, so the fish, hard to use for Krishna, right? Potato, easier to use for Krishna. But now there's qualities of potato. This one's been sitting, in the corner for a while. It's turned green, and it's got all little things growing all over it. So not as nice as one that's not green and doesn't have things growing all over it. You know what I'm saying? So there's always that something more. There's the category, and then within the category. So this is what, is trying to be brought out. Otherwise we'll say, oh, it's connected, that's good enough. But what about the quality of its connection? Quality of what you are connecting. So that's what's being looked at here. Because Mother Jashoda, she's not about to anything of not good quality offered to Krishna. Right? The gopis, it's not going to be anything of bad quality that they're going to offer. So good enough is not good enough. Because who is good enough for? For us. And what was defined before is that it's done out of laziness. Right? It's mode of passion. One doesn't want to do. It's a problem. It's a mode of passion. Right? So in a society that's known for being situated in passion, then there is a lot of laziness when it comes to uplifting rituals. Right? And as we said before, is someone who is situated nicely in the direct activities of devotional service. There's 5 main direct. If there's some laxness on some of these parts, that's another thing. But if someone's situated in the indirect, all they have is proper performance of the activity. Right? Because the standard of it being so devotionally inclined is not very great. So what you're doing indirectly is according to your own desire, your own need. So then then you have to look at the quality of it. Does that make sense? Therefore, the person who is in that simple position, doesn't have money, then they give something simple, then that's fine. But someone who has lots of money and lots of facility, if they give something simple. That doesn't look good. Does that make sense? Therefore, anything done as a sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in Krishna is impermanent and is called asat. These non-Krishna conscious activities are abominable and are useless both in this life and in the next. Right? So here, abominable means it's not connected to Krishna. You know, whether it's a very nice, wonderful activity or it's something not very nice. Right? So that's what we always have to see when we define something as abominable. We have to see what is that definition within the material realm of the quality of the material elements, or we mean its connection to Krishna. You know, it can be both. Yes.
Could something be, let's say, indirectly useful, even though it might be classified as abominable? I mean,
indirectly useful. The point is what would that mean?
It brings you closer to Naishkarmya.
How would it bring you closer to Naishkarmya?
If it moves you from mode of ignorance towards mode of passion.
Yes, and that's there. That's the whole idea. It's like the how you say. You have the person. He's very lazy, so he's not actually how he'll engage in sacrifice or charity, because that means activities. So then, by getting married, it'll move him up to the mode of passion. So therefore, he'll have to act. And then from acting in that way, then if he's doing according to what he's supposed to do, his duties, which is situated in goodness, so he may not be so well, he'll get purified. Then he'll start to see things in relation to Naishkarmya. That will bring him properly situated. Then he can see things very nicely connected to Krishna. But that process is only going to happen in a dynamic way if from the beginning the idea is to do it for Krishna. Because in this age no one really has the great qualification that just by the material good they're going to move themselves from ignorance up to goodness. You know what I'm saying? Because if you had the good qualities to elevate yourself, you'd be in goodness. You know what I'm saying? But if you're in ignorance, it means you don't have the qualification, so the only qualification is going to be through chanting. Yes.
But of these four classes of men who come to Krishna, three
Yes.
of them are basically not there to please Krishna.
Yes, yes. So that's, yeah.
But still it's good that they come there. Because
Yes,
then
but you have to make that distinction. In other words, what's the abominableness?
the selfish motives.
And so, what's the problem with that? It's not connected to Krishna. That's the abominableness. But if you just say, well, if we can connect abominable activities to Krishna, is that okay? People will think of materially it's abominable. But even the most nice material situation is abominable if it's not connected to Krishna. You understand? So that's the point, is that whatever one's situation, you connect that to Krishna. Then within that situation, you pick what's the best. Does that make sense? They are useless in the next life since they were not perfectly executed because of lack of faith. They will not give fame in this life because such faithless acts are condemned by the saintly persons. Right? Because if it's faithless, it'll be in the mode of ignorance. Right? So it won't give you a good result. You perform the activity, not get the result, so that means that there's something more subtle at work here. Right? Because austerity means body, mind, and words, all of them. So maybe the body was engaged, but was the mind and words? So that's. In this 17th chapter, the Lord described different auspicious and inauspicious material situations. The mode of goodness has been glorified as the best material position, and the modes of passion and ignorance have been rejected as abominable. So this is auspicious and inauspicious material. But still, even if it's auspicious material, if it's not connected to Krishna, it's still abominable. It's just nice abominable. You know what I'm saying? So, the example it probably gives of one is bound. So one is bound by iron chains or by silver chains or gold chains. Right? So if, the guys that are sitting there in the row in the prison and all that, they have this chain and this ball there, but they're all in jail, right? So it's abominable. But amongst themselves, the guy with the gold chain and gold ball, he'll say, hey, I got that, you just have the iron one. And he'll feel bad, how come I didn't get a gold one? Does that make sense? So within the prison house, then they make a distinction. But the first point is in the prison or out of the prison. Right? So connected to Krishna or not, that's the first thing. Then within connected, then you make your distinctions what's better. And what's not connected, then you can make distinctions. But the point is the only worthwhile distinctions is if it's a connection to the Lord. Yes?
So it's not abominable to ask Krishna for money?
It's not abominable to ask Krishna for money, but the point is then...
It's not the best, but it's not...
It's not the best, it's not the point, but the point is then what happens if you don't get it when you ask? Then what?
You lose faith.
You lose faith. Why? Because, you know what I'm saying? So if it's a matter of, okay, you go to Krishna because there's no one else you can go to, but still it's up to him whether you get it or not.
Yeah. But in this definition of abominable, it wouldn't be...
Abominable means why do you want the money?
One's own sense gratification. Maybe.
Why does one want sense gratification?
One wants to be happy.
One wants to be happy. Why do you want to be happy?
The nature of the soul.
So why would you choose that method? Control, interact. And what will be your benefit? Because when the sense is connected to the sense objects, you get something. As soon as it's disconnected, you're disconnected. It's not there. Right? It means when the light's on, there's light in the room. You turn the light off, there's no light in the room. It doesn't linger. It's just the senses and the sense objects, as soon as they're separated, there is no lingering. Any lingering's in the mind, not in the sense and sense object. You know what I'm saying? So what benefit you're going to get? Why engage in that way? Right? But, so what are you going to do? Since you're not supposed to do that, what are you going to do? Offer it to Krishna, but then how will it be offered? What's the practical method? Give it to the temple. Okay, that's the money.
Devotional service.
Devotional service, okay. And then you're the one that took it down the rabbit hole. Gauge it according to Shastra. In other words, he took the senses and all that. Means he's just talking about getting some money, and you are taking, the senses. Right, that's you know what I'm saying? So then, what do? Then you connect that to the Scripture. So you're engaged in sense gratification for your own happiness, but you're doing it according to Scripture. You're regulating it. So that's already elevating. It's still not ideal. It's still controlled by passion, but we notice that motive passion is in line with Shastra. Motive ignorance means it's not in line with Shastra. So we've moved it from motive ignorance to passion. Then by being in that mode, then what's going to come? We're going to get our happiness, but we're also going to get our distress. So after a while we start to notice, hey, and so then one can start, and one may still be attached to that activity or attached to that situation, but then one starts to perform it without desire for results. So one's taking a lower activity, connecting it to the Lord. You understand? So that process is going on. It's progressive in this way. That's why you always have to say, what's the motive behind it? Why it's going on? That makes sense? So it's not ideal, but it'll work. But you don't say, oh no, it's okay to ask Krishna for money. No, it's not okay to ask Krishna for money, but if you need to, then that's what you can do. Pure devotional service means you don't. But if you need to, then understand it's not pure devotional service, but it's connected to Krishna, so that's better than it not being. So it's progressive. But don't say that, oh, it's okay, meaning it's pure devotional service. No, understand the gradations. That's the whole point. Right? The problem with rationalizing something or justifying something is then you're trying to equate a lower standard of devotional endeavor to a higher standard. No, you have to make the distinction. And if due to pride, then you're trying to do that, then that's mode of passion or mode of ignorance, depending on how it's applied. Right? If it's for the benefit of maintaining your pride and prestige, it's mode of passion. If it's done out of pride and that, then it's mode of ignorance. Does that make sense? You want it done in that way because it'll protect your position. That's passion. Right? Does that make sense? No? And if it's done just because you are proud, then that's mode of ignorance. Right? Because pride then it means is a symptom of illusion. Does that make sense? So we have to be able to distinguish the path. Otherwise, how do we know where we are and therefore how to engage? So it's not that, okay, well, I can engage where I am, so therefore it's all right. No, it's all right to engage that, but it's all right to engage that because that's where you're standing. But if you move forward, then to say it's all right to engage that, then you're moving back. Right? One has to keep moving forward. Right? But now the last verses of the chapter, the Lord gives his final conclusion. Right? So, auspicious, inauspicious, mode of goodness auspicious, passion, ignorance, inauspicious. But now he has given his final conclusion. Even the perfect sattvic activities are useless when devoid of Krishna consciousness. And even devotional work influenced by passion and ignorance is perfect because it's connected to Krishna. Right? So it's perfect because it's connected to Krishna. So the point is if Krishna satisfaction is what you're looking for, then you would want to offer the best. Right? So if you're able to tell the difference, then you would do that. If you can't tell the difference, don't worry about it. But if you can tell the difference and then say don't worry about it, then that's a fault. Right? The person who doesn't know, he does his best. Right? But the person who does know, better do what he knows is better. Sripad Madhvacharya comments. Verse 28, censuring offerings made without such faith, brings out the indispensability of bhakti for the Lord as a necessary ingredient of sattvika swabhava. So in other words, that faith in Krishna to please Krishna, that's the essential element. That's what one's trying to gain. Then all these other elements, then they fall into place. Right? So that's the whole point. Someone has faith, it doesn't matter what position they start from. They connect themselves to Krishna. And then as they become purified, they will naturally develop. Right? So this way then one can accommodate the broadest range of engaging people in Krishna consciousness. But you're not saying it's okay. You're saying it's okay. Means in other words, is an activity in the mode of ignorance okay? It can never be okay. Or mode of passion, it can never be okay. Mode of goodness, that can be okay. But actually, unless it's connected to Krishna, it's not okay. So if someone's in the mode of passion or ignorance and they connect to Krishna, what's okay about it? The connecting to Krishna, not the mode of passion and ignorance. Right? So in other words, it's okay because they're connected to Krishna. They'll start there. But as they progress, if there's an opportunity to improve the quality of their material situation, they would naturally do it. Sense the results for Krishna. Right? And if they can't, then don't worry about it. Does that make sense? You know, is it better? There's the drunk bump on the street, is out there. And if he's willing to take prasad and do a little chanting, is that good? Yes. But he's still, drinking his alcohol, living on the street. He's still, pretty low, how you say? Yeah. Basically not what you call, very developed. He's not going to win any words for, haute couture or anything, so.
No, he might.
No, it'd have to be clean. It means that with the same clothes, if you washed them a little bit like that, then you might be able to pull it off. But it's the panache, how he wears it. That we're talking about. But otherwise, you do have a good point. So he's not going to, and one can say, oh, he's useless and that, this and that. No, he's connected to Krishna. But with time, by that chanting and taking prasad, then he might start moving up and then, not be, drinking alcohol or not living on the street, or, you understand? It'll slowly come. But the point is whatever situation he's in, that's fine. As long as he's connected. So the quality of his connection, that's what you should focus on. Because you can't focus on the quality of his activity. Does that make sense? And then with time, then you can. Because the modes of passion are very hard to connect them. Can be, but hard to connect. So in other words, his situation is not good, but he's connected. So that aspect, that's what's important. That makes sense? These are fine points. Then one can expand the preaching. It doesn't mean you lower the standards. Some will say, oh, we have to accommodate, we can't be so fanatic. No. The point is pure devotional service, is it fanatic? Is the concept of pure devotional service fanatic? Because if we say, oh, we can't be fanatic, means we're saying we're dropping the standards of pure devotional service. No, that remains. Right, the standards, but at what position one can take up the process of devotional service about, that can be from anywhere, as long as that connection is made. Does that make sense? Srila Prabhupada summarizes chapter 17 as follows. Anything done without the transcendental objective, whether it be sacrifice, charity, or penance, is useless. Therefore, in this verse, it is declared that such activities are abominable. Interesting to note, this is the 17th chapter, just before the end. And this is where this point is made in the Bhagavatam. It's in the 11th canto. So just before the end, then this point is made. That there is how you say, auspicious and inauspicious, or pious and impious. It's pious if it's connected to Krishna. It's impious if it's not. It doesn't matter the material situation. Everything should be done for the supreme in Krishna consciousness. Without such faith, without the proper guidance, there can never be any fruit. So that means you have the proper faith and you're working under authority. Right? Then it can be progressive. In all the Vedic scriptures, faith in the Supreme is advised. In the pursuit of all Vedic instructions, the ultimate goal is the understanding of Krishna. No one can obtain success without following this principle. Therefore, the best course is to work from the very beginning in Krishna consciousness under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. Right? Therefore, from the beginning, no matter what your situation, that's the best thing. Faith in Krishna and Guru, then everything will be successful. That is the way to make everything successful. The mode of goodness is better than the modes of passion and ignorance. The one who takes directly to Krishna consciousness is transcendental to all three modes of material nature. Although there is a process of gradual elevation, if one, by the association of pure devotees, takes directly to Krishna consciousness, that is the best way. In other words, there's a gradual process in the Vedic that you'll go through all these different things to slowly elevate yourself through the modes, over lifetimes in that. But devotional service means it'll be directly done very quickly. So we look at it, 30 years is a long time. No, it's not. 30 years is a drop in eternity, right? So it's not big. We're not talking about thousands of lifetimes to elevate. We're talking about direct. So if one's in the association of the pure devotees, naturally one will be doing activities that they will be directing. Anything wrong, they will point out. Right? You will be educated how to improve. So that's the best situation. Being chanting in the association of devotees. You're doing that with faith, then that will be the most dynamic situation you can be in. If one, by the association of pure devotees, takes directly to Krishna consciousness, that is the best way. And that is recommended in this chapter. To achieve success in this way, one must first find the proper spiritual master and receive training under his direction. Then one can achieve faith in the Supreme. When that faith matures, in course of time, it is called love of God. Right? So this is the point where we understand that when we have, faith, Shraddha, Sadhu, Sangha, Bhajana, Kriya, this process, going through these 9 stages, it's that each one matures more. Right? So when faith is fully mature, then that's prema. So that means faith went along with all those other processes. If faith's not there, then it doesn't have any meaning. Right? Because it said mode of ignorance is something done without faith. To achieve success in this way, one must first find the proper spiritual master and receive training under his direction. Then one can achieve faith in the Supreme. When that faith matures, in course of time, it is called love of God. This love is the ultimate goal of the living entities. One should therefore take to Krishna consciousness directly. That is the message of the 17th chapter. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan summarizes this chapter as follows. Rejecting faith arising from one's impressions, the person who takes shelter in faith arising from Scripture becomes qualified for the highest goal. This is the ordinance of the 17th chapter. So this would be the application of why this knowledge would be given. Otherwise, if the whole point is just that faith, why not that just be discussed? Because the point is that rejecting faith arising from one's impressions, right? The samskars situate you in the modes. Right? So, if someone is being influenced by their faith in the situation of their modes, that will be an impediment, as opposed to the faith in Krishna. So it's not the situation in the modes that's the problem. It's the faith in them. Does that make sense? Right? So then that makes the definition. That's why one would be able to analyze this, because one's faith is in there. One analyzes it, one can see, where one's situated. And so that's what's causing the problems, because one's faith is in something other than Krishna, and especially if it's in the modes of passion or ignorance. But even if it's in goodness, generally we don't have that much problem with, obstacles stemming from the mode of goodness, like that. But
so that's why it's so tough, for example, to distribute a book to a Christian as opposed to a guy who maybe even more ignorance.
Yeah, like
because he has not necessarily faith in his ignorance, where the other has faith in whatever he's...
Yeah, that's there. Right. So does that make sense? So generally, mode of goodness is more useful, but still, ultimately, it can't be one's faith in that. Like before, the point of being non-diplomatic, being truthful, being straightforward. These things, that will be seen in the mode of goodness. But still, if it's not connected to Krishna, it will be an obstacle. So if we have faith in these things that on their own they stand, they have significance, they have substance, that's an impediment. Right? So the analyzation is simply to be able to analyze what's there and what one actually has one's faith in. Then one can see, is it Krishna or not? Yeah? So that's the point. So one is trying to say the direct method means under the direction of Krishna's, faith in Krishna under the direction of the spiritual master, that's what should be there. Any faith that's there from our previous impressions, that will be an obstacle. Right? Does that make sense? Yes.
No, you said that mode of goodness can look like the mode of ignorance. So
it means you have mode of ignorance. Not mode of goodness can look like mode of ignorance. Mode of ignorance by good talking can look like mode of goodness, because you can speak things just like what are you told when you're going to a second-hand car lot? What is the guy that's there telling you about this car? It's just like new, or it's even better than new because it's been fixed. So, but the point is where are you? You know what I'm saying? So you forget your situation and become enamored by what the guy's saying. So he's able to turn it around. You know what I'm saying? Because opposites look more similar than what's in the middle. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? Liberals aren't fighting with someone who's balanced, or conservatives aren't fighting with someone who's balanced. They're fighting with each other, because that's where the common point lies. You know what I'm saying? So they're both extreme, but in the same topic, just opposite. But the extremity in the same topic, that's the common point. The balanced person is not extreme. So therefore, where's the connection? You know what I'm saying? There's nothing to engage with. So is that okay? Okay. So that's what the 17th chapter is giving us. Wow. 18th is very developed. Chapter 18, conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. Krishna explains the meaning of renunciation and the effects of the modes of nature on human consciousness and activity. He explains Brahman realization, the glories of the Bhagavad Gita, and the ultimate conclusion of the Gita. The highest path of religion is absolute, unconditional, loving surrender unto Lord Krishna, which frees one from all sins, brings one to complete enlightenment, and enables one to return to Krishna's eternal spiritual abode. So verses 1 to 18. Work combined with knowledge brings liberation. So this is then verses 1 to 12, summary of karma, verses 13 to 18, summary of jnana, right? This is the conclusion. So it means everything that's in the whole book will be touched upon. Just like everything that's in the book will be given in its basic seed form in the second chapter. Right? The field is set in the first chapter. That's where it's situated. The knowledge begins in the second chapter, right? So that's all the fundamental points. And then the conclusion will be in the 18th. Verses 19 to 40, entanglement in the modes. 19 to 28, knowledge, actions, and performer according to the modes. Verses 29 to 35, understanding and determination according to the modes. And verses 36 to 40, happiness according to the modes. Verses 41 to 48, worshipping the Lord through performance of one's occupational duties is true renunciation. Because we've been describing before is that once activity should be done without desire for result. Right? So now we're going to learn what does that mean without desire for result. Right? Just like before it says one should perform one's activities without being controlled by the modes. So then you have to define the modes. Right? Does that make sense? So each time they'll go. So now it's gotten to that point. So what does that really mean? Because we've always said before is that activity performed for the Lord. Activity performed for the Lord. Knowledge for the Lord. Meditation on the Lord. So we get that idea. Then it's on the Lord, but what does that mean on the Lord? Then it's with devotion. Right? And so how one's going to be able to understand the fine points of the activity for the Lord, knowledge for the Lord, meditation upon the Lord. Right? So that's these up to 13 to 17, because they're going to give this. Now, here will be the conclusion showing how it practically applies. Right? Because the thesis is the point. The conclusion is the practical application of that thesis. Right? So it's the same thing, it's just the applied thesis. Verses 49 to 66. From Jnana Yoga to pure devotional service. 49 to 55. From Jnana Yoga to Brahma Bhuta. 56 to 63. Working in pure devotion. And 64 to 66. The most confidential knowledge. Become a pure devotee of Krishna. Then verses 67 to 71. Preaching and studying Bhagavad Gita. 72 to 73. Arjuna is determined to act according to Krishna consciousness. 74 to 78. Sanjaya's prediction. Okay, so I guess we'll start this tomorrow. Okay, so we're getting there.
A lot of short chapters.
Yeah, well this one is...
Not so short.
Yes, well this is like we had chapters like this before. There were 18, 20 pages like that. we got through them, so we can also have faith that we can get through this one also, like that. So this one will be easier because any question that goes back to previous chapters is actually covered in this chapter. So now, from this chapter, it won't be a problem to ask questions that take us back. Yeah, but the other chapters weren't, because they're based on an understanding of what was being given in the first 6 chapters as techniques, and in the second 6 chapters as analyzing, its application, how to connect it in devotion. Right? So that was the difficulty in questions there. But now we have come to a stage where that won't be a problem anymore. Om Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jainatai Gaura Premana.